and welcome back to a brand new episode. We are talking today all things athlete performance curve. And if you are an athlete who is aspiring to reach new levels in your conditioning, your performance, then we really need to understand what this curve is all about. And we can refer to this as well as what we call stress adaptation model. Okay, stress adaptation model. And as always, before we get stuck into this, if you are really loving all of this education stuff that I absolutely love sharing with you, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the love heart. And and let's just continue to push this information out there to help as many aspiring athletes as possible. Okay, so today is all about understanding what is the implication of training at the wrong level. If we're advanced and we're not training hard enough, what implications can that have? If we are a beginner or a novice and we are put through a training program, a generic plan that's too advanced for us, what are the problems with that? Okay, because when we are exposed to the wrong essentially periodization or the wrong progression, then it can have detrimental effects on our performance and what we are actually capable of achieving. So we really need to, think about exactly what programs we're signing up to. Really do your research if you are looking for, essentially a training process that you can commit to. Like, please don't just find the first generic plan, pull it off and do it, because, I know it's fun. I know that it's great to have structure, but also it is very, very important to understand what the performance curve is and the implications of a beginner taking part in something that is too advanced and stretches them beyond their limit and capacity early on, leading to burnout, injury, lack of motivation. And also, if you are more of an advanced athlete and you want to save a few pennies, so you jump on some generic 12-week plan, it might not actually be fulfilling your capacity for what you are able to achieve. Okay, so before we get into this, I just want to talk about this. We can kind of apply this method or this model to events and how long we take to recover between events, but also our general training. Okay, if a beginner athlete attempts to follow an advanced program that is too advanced for them, they will either become overwhelmed by the training method, and this is something I've learned as a coach from working with hundreds of people in their fitness journey, more recently their Hyrox development, or two, they'll get so overwhelmed with the training volume and intensity that they could potentially remain a beginner indefinitely, like in terms of you have to keep starting again, find a new program, find a different coach, try again, and never really getting to where they want to be. Okay, so let's get straight to it then. So what is the athlete performance curve? The athlete performance curve is talking about moving from a starting ability and how we continue to make progress. Now, this might not be too clear, so don't panic, because I will be talking through it, doing a couple of little jots on there as well. If you're only listening, don't worry, I will explain this. So if you're not watching on YouTube where you can actually see me right now with my whiteboard and my pen, then please don't panic, because again, I'm gonna talk about this right now. So everybody, let's take Hyrox as an example. Everybody is coming in with an element of starting ability. Okay, every single person has a first race. Okay, so everyone is entering with a starting ability. Some people's starting ability is going to be much more advanced than somebody else, but every single person is going to have a starting ability. Okay, now when we go through a training progress, in order to progress our strength, in order to progress our aerobic capacity, in order to develop our VO2 max, in order to progress our overall Hyrox conditioning, or whatever sport we're applying this to, our body has to go through an element of stress. Okay, stress is good. There's also, by the way, guys, there's also 3 types of stress. Okay, when we look at like human development, there's 3 types of stress. There is physical stress, which I would refer to training as. We put our body through an element of physical stress. It breaks the body down. It's very catabolic. So we're breaking fibers. We're actually breaking ourselves. But in order to be anabolic on the other side of that, to grow stronger, to rebuild stronger, etc. So we have physical stress. We then have what we call emotional stress. Okay, so that's stress, what we think. Okay, that's our thought patterns, our beliefs, our past experiences, our trauma. Like those things are what we call emotional stress. And then we have chemical stress, chemistry if you like though, all right? We then have chemical stress. Chemical stress is stress so for example, the stress our body goes through to digest good food and to process that. Right? Like the ATP system to turn and convert our body into glycogen, to digest nutrients and use them for different things that we require, energy. So there's 3 types of stress. Okay, now if we're looking to have ultimate performance, we need to tick all 3 of those boxes. Okay, and when I say tick those boxes, we need to have the right dose of each stress. Now, I would argue that in this day and age, in the Western side of the world, our emotional stress takes up a lot, right? I'm talking like money, I'm talking finance problems, I'm talking like relationship issues, I'm talking about, family, like all of the pressures and stresses that we have in this day and age make up that emotional stress kind of, 33% of our pie chart. Then we have our physical stress, which is what we do. Emotional stress, like I just said, is what we think, feel. And then our chemical stress is essentially what we go through. Okay, essentially like what we have to go through in terms of our body, like chemical reactions, chemical changes. Usually food is going to be our chemical stress. Okay, for example, meat is a lot harder to digest than a soup, for a homemade soup, for example, right? There's going to be more stress on our digestive system trying to digest a fat 300-gram steak than a homemade soup. So there's lots of different stresses going on in and around us. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. I can save that for a whole nother episode talking about the stresses of the body, what we call eustress and distress as well, and the balance of that and how that can knock our body out of sync. But today I'm just simply referring to physical stress, okay, which is what we do in training. We put our body through high elements sometimes of physical stress. Definitely me at the moment. I'm doing a 18-hour training week at the moment, which is seriously physically testing me. So this is our starting ability. And again, if you're listening but not watching, we have a starting ability of fitness if we're getting into a new program, a new process, a new sport, something different. We're entering the gym for the first time. Or we could be an athlete that has a background in running. We're pretty, advanced already, but our starting ability is what we're referring to in Hyrox terms as when we first prepare for our first ever race. Everyone's starting ability is going to be completely different. Now, we put our body through a stressor. This is what we call being catabolic. Okay, so we're putting our body through enough stress here that it makes adaptations. But the adaptation doesn't start yet, okay? We're breaking the body down for a good while, maybe a few weeks, okay? And then when we need to, actually not when we need to, we don't want to wait that long until we need to, we have a structured deload period. Okay, we have a recovery period. So let's say that our body makes our body is in its kind of stressful state, physical state. It started a new process. You're into a program. You're 6 weeks in or 5 weeks in, and your body now is, really starting to be under a lot of physical stress, and it needs a recovery. Okay, so we apply the recovery to our client's program, or we apply the recovery to our client. Okay. So our body starts to recover. It's given it enough time to recover. We're eating good foods. We are, we're in and out of the hot and cold, we're in the sauna, we're doing cold plunging, we're just recovering. We're not putting our body through too much stress in training during this period of time. So what then happens is this line that you can see here, which is our starting ability, our body now starts to come up through recovery, and then you're going to hit a point where your body is actually starting to make deep adaptations, okay? And between here and here, you're making adaptations, which now creates a brand new line of ability, okay? Your ability, your fitness, your conditioning, your strength, your speed has now increased because you've given it a stressor, the right dose of stressor, and this is really important that you're training at the right level for you, which I believe is why, you know, super generalized programs aren't the greatest for people who are looking to be advanced in a sport. You can't be following something everyone else is because it's not going to be you training at the right level. Whereas if you're a beginner and you're quite new, generic programs could work, okay? And that's why with my programming, a lot of work I do is working with the individual, okay? So we have the stressor, we have the deload period or recovery. Our recovery allows the body to restore. This is what we call anabolic state. So our body is now growing. Our strength is growing, our muscles are growing, our capacity, our lungs, our mitochondria are adjusting, okay? Our alveoli are strengthening. And now we have this little period here of adaptation, okay? We start to feel really good. Okay, I'm ready to hit my next training block. I feel recovered, I'm ready to go. And you now have this new level of fitness, essentially. And then we repeat this cycle. We repeat this curve. This is what we call, again, this is what we call the stress adaptation model. We then start to stress the body again. So we might go into a little bit more advanced programming now. So it's kind of starting to break the body down again. It's going into that catabolic state. We need to be making sure we're fueling this well as well. Lots of protein, lots of good carbohydrates. But now, this is where a good coach comes in. A good coach is never going to allow you to stress the body so much that being in the catabolic state drops you back down below this starting ability. We do not want to regress. No one wants to regress. We all want to progress, okay? So the problem we have is if we don't have the right dose of training in this next cycle, or it's too advanced, then what we're probably going to find is, you know, we're going to probably regress. So we want the right dose. And then when we hit this next point, we need to start to recover again. So this could be another deload period here. We need to deload at the right time, catch the body at the right time before it's starting to fatigue. Okay, then we recover. We're back on the up again. We're in the anabolic state. We're doing all we can on our recovery protocol. Bring this a tiny bit closer so you can see. Okay, so we're now in this recovery zone again. Then, what do? We inject a little bit more training max, right? So we're now kind of like progressing. We're now really getting into that VO2 max. We're now testing, you know, top end pace work. We're now lifting heavier. We're working towards building that 1 rep max, okay? We're going through another adaptation period here. We're providing the stress again, right? We're putting our body under stress. Good stress though, okay? We want a response from the good stress. If we provide too much stress, we're just gonna do this and fall off the edge of the cliff. Okay, and this is why like looking after your emotional stress while training is so important as well, because all of these things do combine and your system is only going to be as good as how well you manage all of these stressors, not just this physical stress, but also the emotional stress and what you're eating as well. Okay, so we now have this point again where the body's starting to, you know, get a little stressed again. So we're just going to inject that little bit of recovery again, that little deload period here. And then we're off again. And now we're hitting a whole new level of fitness. Okay, we're hitting PRs. We might have 6-minute race PB. Okay, this could be towards the sort of end of the season now. This could be like a season growth period. Now, this doesn't just refer to training, by the way, guys. Okay, this can also be referred to when we look at races. Like, there's the question always asked, how long should I take after a race? How much recovery should I have? And that's going to differ from person to person. And it's also going to be a result of how conditioned you are. How much training did you do in your pre-season, right? How used to racing are you? How used to your body? Like, we all know how that first Hyrox feels, right? It takes us 3-4 weeks to recover. But then when we've been in the sport 3 or 4 years and we're used to that stimulus and we're used to being in the race and we're now training more volume, okay, you know, it only really takes me a week now. Okay, or 10 days to mentally, physically recover. But we want to refer to this athlete performance curve. We want to refer to this stress adaptation model in our races as well, because this is our starting point of the season. Let's look at it in a different way now. This is our start point. Okay, this is our start point along this line here. We race, okay? We stress the body out. Okay, so we've just done a race. Okay, this is the race. So we've literally taken everything out of our body. We have literally given that race everything we've got. I'd love to hear below in the comments how long it takes you to recover from a race. Okay? Now we take recovery. This could be a period of 7 days. 7 days. For some people, it might need to be 10 days. And again, this is why it's so important not only to know yourself, but for your coach to know your body as well. Okay, might be 10 days. But this period of recovery, you can see it says recovery here. This period of recovery could be 10 days, it could be 7 days. Okay, but you're not only recovering now to where you left the last time, with that race behind you and that big training cycle, now you've recovered efficiently. Okay, we're now on a new level of training. Okay, I've taken my 10 days, I now feel restored, I feel ready to go. And now I can start to hit a new training cycle with more energy and I can start to make clear adaptations. Okay, so you're making adaptations here. Okay, now you're starting to stress the body out again. You've got another race here. Okay, so now, boom, you need another deload period. Then we start to increase the training. This could be another 7 to 10 day recovery. Then we might maximize a 4-week training block before our next race or 6-week training block. And you can see the cycle repeats. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to reach a new level every single race so that by the end of the season, you're peaking. Like this is the trophy. Excuse my drawing, by the way. Okay, this is the trophy. This is what we're aiming for. You could start your season at a 112. Okay, you take the right recovery. You go into the next training block refreshed. You get another 4 to 6 week training cycle under your belt. Boom. The next race with the right adaptation because you've got the right foundations. You've got a race done. You've also recovered well enough and you've given yourself enough time in training to make new adaptations or new stressors, new stimulus, and you've given yourself enough time to taper. Now you could be hitting a 108. We go through that cycle again. We recover enough. Okay? We add a new stressor. Could be a 4-week training block or a 6-week training block. We taper effectively. Okay, boom. We've now taken that 4 or 6 week adaptation training block. We're now hitting a 105. That's what I'm talking about. And you continue to work. Now, the problem we have, we've not taken enough time between races. You guys tell me. With this, I mean, it looks like an absolute shitstorm now. I'm so sorry. Just doodled everywhere. What's going to happen is if you don't take enough time between races to recover, and then you're racing again in a week's time, you don't have time to create more stress on the body and go back into an anabolic state. So you're staying in a catabolic state. So what that means is you're not recovering. You're not going into a new training block to go from catabolic to anabolic. And therefore, what you might find is actually this line here where you first started, you're either just going to stay along that line and keep like recovering, but then not coming back up. You're just going to keep cycling this, or you could end up regressing. So slowly your race times will actually get worse, or even worse than that, you could end up with an injury or burnout, or central nervous system is on the floor. Okay, so I hope this has helped today. Please make sure when doing your research as a Hyrox athlete, you are making sure you're maximizing your training efforts, you're recovering well, you're making sure that you know your stress adaptation model. Every single person is completely different. For one, how much they can take in a training cycle, depending on their, are they advanced, are they beginner, are you new to the stimulus of Hyrox, have you been doing Hyrox 3 years? These are all things I find out about an athlete before I work with them. So I can prescribe the right dose of training to create adaptation, but then also know through speaking with them and having communication how the body is starting to feel after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. When do we need to recover? When do we need to provide that deload so that athlete can recover and make those adaptations needed to get to the next level? As always, hit subscribe, comment below, give me some love if you guys are loving this right now. There's plenty more to come on this education work, but for now, I'm out. I'm about to wipe this whiteboard because I've made an absolute mess on here. Hit subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and be the first to know when I drop another education banger from me to you with love. Have a cracking day. Much love.